Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for the opportunity for being able to speak to you this morning. This is my first time to speak to a Vietnamese group in English. I know one Vietnamese word, chào buổi sáng. Well, another one, nuk mam, which some of you probably don't know what that is. But I had some early experience with Vietnamese communities when I was in college. I studied in Oklahoma. And for some reason, there's a group of Vietnamese who ended up in Tulsa. And I don't know why, but and previous to that, they were boat people who went to the Philippines. And in the Philippines, there was an island allocated just for the boat people. And that became the transition area for them to come to America. I remember one of my classmates, and his name was Philip Nguyen, could hardly speak any English. And I had to kind of interpret him, which I didn't understand what half of the things he said. But I remember Philip was very studious. And by the end of the year, he was making straight A's. And I was barely passing. And I go, how can you make straight A's? You don't even speak English. By the time we graduated, he got 4.0. I mean, you know, you're crazy. Now he's got 2 PhDs. And I'm homeless. But seriously, it's been a good experience with me working with the Vietnamese community. And here in Dallas-Fort Worth area, I have several Vietnamese volunteers who has helped me. And that's how I got to meet Ethan, and Huong Long. But yesterday, my Vietnamamese physician, and she always does this, prescribed to me my blood pressure medication. And she's been doing this for, she takes care of me, asks me how I am, and she does it all pro bono. So we have kindred spirits, and I hope that one of these days I'll get to visit Vietnam and see some of the folks there that I have some acquaintance. I've been invited to go there as well as other countries, of course, but and so I'm hoping I'll be able to do that. My favorite shopping center here in Fort Worth and in Oklahoma City are Vietnamese grocery stores. The one in Oklahoma, here I always order fresh, squeezed sugar cane. And that reminds me of my village, which we are sugar cane plantation. And that's what, led me to that. And then I also order, and these are my comfort food. It reminds me of home, a special corn that I get from there, and then that kind of relaxes me and makes me feel better. But anyway, thank you again for giving me this opportunity, and hopefully we'll be able to keep in touch. And if there's anything I can do, I would be more than happy to be of service. With me is Harry, and Harry has been a friend of mine for over a year, and when Huong Long comes in, I'd like for him to see him because I think they have contact sometime before. If you have your Bibles with you, please turn it to the book of Matthew, chapter 25, verse 31, to the end of the chapter. Matthew chapter 25, verse 31. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people from one another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right hand and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and fed you, or thirsty or give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invited you in, and needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Then he will say to those on his left, "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into eternal fire and prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me." They will also answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or stranger or needing clothes or sick and in prison and did not help you?" He will reply, "Truly, I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me." Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. This is a very loaded passage, rich with appreciation and condemnation, filled with instruction and commandment. And in this passage, one thing I want us to understand, that what he was saying is not a matter of choice, but what he was saying is a matter of obligation, instruction. It's a command. It's between right and wrong. It's between life and death, and it's between heaven and earth. I know we all have our own beliefs and even doctrines and practices. This is a fundamental Christian doctrine that I think no one can deny or should deny. And unfortunately, all of us, myself included, have a lot more room to grow into and apply. I want to share with you several things today based on this passage. And there's going to be a lesson on fighting poverty and breaking the cycle of dependency. But I'll also be talking a little bit about livelihood and about sheep and goats, and I think the Vietnamese word for sheep is conde. How do you pronounce that? Goat, conde. Conye. Yay. That's goat. Okay. Yay. That's easier. Or just bah would be universal, I think. But anyway, let me begin from the start. Several weeks ago was Mother's Day, and next Sunday is Father's Day. And I know it's been commercialized a great deal. But there's benefits to it because we, at least once a year, we pause and think of our maternal and paternal guides. And in Proverbs chapter 31, verse 10 to 13, and just summarizing it, talks about the virtues of a godless wife. Character who can find she's far worth more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She is clothed with strength and dignity, can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom and faithful instruction. in her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive, beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Kind of high standard for women right there. But it's one that we can aspire, both men and women, but in this particular case, women, and qualities that we can emulate. The Bible stresses the vital role of women in the transmission of faith from mothers to their sons and daughters, from generation to generation, from community to community. Not only is motherhood vital in the Old Testament, Paul calls out the mother of Timothy, his grandmother. He honors them for being the ones who gave Timothy a vision of what to believe. He says, I am reminded of your sincere faith, a faith that dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and now I'm sure dwells in you as well. 2 Timothy 1:5. Paul calls out moms and grandmothers for meritorious conduct, and we should too. In churches, we find that women outnumber men more. In community activities and gatherings, especially the ones that I do, women outnumber men more. For some reason or another, whether we accept it or not, we are a world of matriarchal leadership. And to some degree, that is natural because, as the saying goes, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. We may put men as elders and leaders, and we may put men as government officials, but it's the women really that works behind the scenes and establish the foundation of the generations to come. And so women must never underestimate their influence, their power, because leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less, according to John Maxwell. People who may have leadership positions and titles are not necessarily the real leaders, but it is people who have influence. And so in my ministry, I've kept that in mind, that it's not the title that matters, but rather it's the relationship. And in relationship, we establish our leadership. In my life, my mom was a leader in her own right. My dad is fairly well known in the Philippines, in the church circles, and in the community. He's the speaker, he's the person in front, he's the mover and shaker, he's the president of the college, he's the preacher, the church planter, the missionaries, and all of the above. But it's really my mother who is the one working behind the scene, laying the foundation that my dad could never reach in his lifetime had it not been for her. Unfortunately, last year, while I was suffering from COVID and, can hardly breathe, I was watching my mom in her last moment online losing hers. And so it was a difficult time, but I'm glad I lived long enough, hopefully, to continue to honor her legacy and her memory. Before that, it was my grandmother. And I'm sharing with you because I think some of you can relate to this to some degree or another. Before that, my grandmother was the matriarch of our family, the deeply spiritual, powerful, intense, religious leader in her own right. In our church, women do not speak publicly, at least in the assembly. But she speaks to preachers. He prays over preachers. He delivers the message even in her deathbed. I remember as a child when we would visit her in her farm, she would gather us before bedtime and pray and pray and pray. And as most kids are, I would be the first to sleep. And then when I wake up in the middle of the night, I could still see the silhouette in her with a kerosene lamp, sitting prostrate, her lips moving, and she's still praying. When I wake up in the morning, that's the first thing I would see, was that woman sitting down and praying. And I thought, this woman never sleeps. One of her prayers was that her children will not only become faithful in the Lord, but become preachers. And one of her prayers was, I also become a preacher. And before she died, all her boys, except one, she had 8 kids, became preachers. And all the women, all 4 of them, were married to preachers. In my family, I have 25 relatives who are gospel preachers in the Philippines. That's a great thing, except when we get together, everybody wants to talk, nobody wants to listen. But that's beside the point. She was a prayerful woman whose prayers were answered. And now my son is a preacher, and I hope to raise a new generation of preachers, not only within the family, but also within the fellowship and beyond. I've planted dozens of churches, and hopefully before the end of my life, I'll be able to plant dozens more churches and lead thousands more to Christ. But prayer of a righteous woman, a holy and godly one, that was not limited to human restrictions, but let God shine in her life, that changed many lives. I'm sharing this to let you know that my grandmother is a product of our mission efforts. We don't know that the work that we support all over the world has touched people's lives, and that there are Christians in other parts of the world, that can be Asia, that can be Africa, that can be Central America, that we don't know, but powerful men and women are impacting and affecting lives spiritually. My mom and my grandmother were not only spiritual leaders, but they're also business leaders in their communities, so that men can go out and preach. Somebody has to bring in the bacon and the money, because preachers don't get paid very well. And so they worked as Christian entrepreneurs, and it is them that supplies the need of the preachers and help those who are less fortunate. I remember we used to live in a Muslim community. And Muslims were not farmers at all. They were fishermen. And fishing is feast and famine. I remember time and time again, there were Muslims who would come to her and ask for food. And us having rice mill and farms and stuff like that, she was always, they never go to my granddad. They went to my grandmother. That's probably why today I have an affinity in working with the homeless. Because the influence of my mom and my grandmother led me towards that direction. In the Philippines, I'm more known as a poverty fighter. I go to villages that are dirt poor, who are the poorest in the country, and I teach them self-sustainability. I'm an organic farmer, and so without very much capital, I can grow my own food. I turn trash to treasure, junk to jewel, waste to wealth, garbage into gold. And please remind me before this is over, I'll deal with that. That will remind me right there. But I go around and tell people that hunger is a choice. Hey, Mr. Hong, good to see you. That guy saved me at homeless camp one time. Brave man to go out there and help me out. But I lost my place there. It's your fault. But working with the homeless has been a big part of my life in the last 4 years. And interestingly enough, the richest and the most powerful nation in the world is struggling with a large community of homeless people. And it's sad because jobs are available, food is unlimited, housing is available, and yet people are so lost in their lives that they are in such darkness that they cannot see what you and I can see. Looking at some statistics that I've seen in the past, I understand that Vietnamese and Chinese are the wealthiest Americans who live in America. An average Vietnamese and Chinese makes more money than average American citizen, black or white. And the reason being is because many of the Vietnamese and Chinese and other migrants come here because this is the land of opportunity. This is the place where dreams can be fulfilled, where there's freedom to make as much money as you're willing to work hard. And that's what some of you have done, or your parents have done, and that has allowed you to achieve a more comfortable life than most people who live here. And perhaps one of the things that I've shared to Ethan is that one of the things I'd like to do and accomplish in this short time that I have with you is to help you, encourage you, if not guide you, how to help the homeless in the land that has given us a home. We have to pay back. And if we want the people here to accept us, embrace us, it's not a matter of going the streets and protesting. And that has some purpose. But rather it is being in the streets and being an example and letting people know that we care. We care as migrants, but more especially, we care as people of God. We must empathize with those who are suffering because, as we read in the scriptures, Jesus Christ says so. And in Jesus, we find an example that He too was homeless. Foxes have holes, birds have nests. The Son of Man does not even have a pillow to rest His head on. And so Jesus relates to the homeless. He cares about the homeless. He makes it such a command that it's an imperative instructions for people of faith to have a heart for those who are hungry and thirsty. For those who are in darkness, and if anything else, homelessness is really not a lack of resources. Homelessness is a lack of hope. And who better can offer hope to these people than those who believe in Jesus Christ? The best thing that we can do for them is not just giving them bread and just not doing a flyby and say, here's a buck and here's whatever. But rather giving of ourself and of our time, of praying for them and being their friend. And many of them probably will never appreciate that because of mental illness. They're just not there. But still, the command is the same. To care for them. To love them. I want to stop a picture of this. Harry knows this girl here. She used to be Miss Universe contestant in bodybuilding contest. She made it all the way to first runner-up. Had she stayed there for a 5 more years, she would have been Miss Universe bodybuilding. I saw her yesterday, and she's been there for like 6 years. She was in the front of several magazines, covered several magazines. Our mom wants her to come home. But there's something with people, especially now, if you go to that place there, many of them have already been driven away, but there's still many of them staying. And if you go there, especially now, it's not because they're lazy. It's not just because they're drug addicts, and they are. It's just that they have mental illness. How do you explain mental illness? How do you help mental illness? It's hard, but the least thing you can do with people who are mentally ill is to judge them and condemn them. the best thing you can do is to love them. So I used to run tent cities in Fort Worth. Biggest tent cities. But they're also the cleanest tent cities. You ever seen where homeless live? They're usually full of trash, dirty. Ours, Ethan got to see it. At least until we got kicked out. Ours is clean. It's like a park. It's like a campground. Because when I go serve them, I tell them, this is our home. We need to make our home clean. It's the last sign of dignity left in us. And so before I give them food, before I give them clothing, before I give them trash bag, tent, sleeping bag, whatever it is that they need, I'll try to get it to them. I ask them to pick up trash. So sometimes the hard ones, I do bargain. Okay, here's I'll give you this sleeping bag if you bring back to me 5 garbage bags full of trash. And they, thank God, many of them complied. And those who don't, because just of mental illness, then I send, others to help out. I talked to a code enforcer one time, and he said, our homeless camp is the cleanest camp he's ever seen. He said, I've been kicking camps out for 20 years. This is the cleanest camp I've ever seen. But then he goes, I'm still going to kick you out. But not today. And they allow us to stay for months and months, sometimes 6 months. Because we pretty much maintain a resemblance of order. Let me segue from that. Before I go to that, if you guys be interested too, here's some of your leaders. They can assist you. They can lead you to me. I still give tours in Lancaster Avenue. Those of you who are interested to do that, I don't get involved there as much as I can because hopefully next month I would like to be in my island, sitting under a coconut tree, looking the white sand, crystal clear water, and reconnect back to my homeland. I've been here 2 years straight without having gone home, and I miss home so much. But I'll get back to that in a minute. I want you to. Can you distribute these? I want you to leave here with bracelets. This is free. And maybe even a necklace, if you wish. And there's a purpose to this.
You want to give everybody one?
Yeah, everybody gets one. If you don't have enough,
That's okay.
If I don't, I might have some more in the car. I want you to get a bracelet because this has a powerful symbolism. This is shaped like a what? This is shaped like a fish. Now these are made out of recycled paper by single moms and widows in the Philippines. We help them become self-sustaining. Instead of just giving them fish, we taught them how to fish. Instead of just giving them hand out, we help raise their hand up. Instead of just giving them aid, we teach them trade. We believe the solution to poverty is not just charity, but self-sustainability. It's not just aid, but trade. Aid is just a band-aid. It's a temporary solution to a permanent problem. It doesn't build dignity or create self-sustainability. It can lead to dependency. And so bracelets like this, we make bags, bracelets, necklace, everything made out of recycled paper. Airlines throw away their magazines after a month. And so we take it from them and then we make all kinds of stuff. So you're going to get some necklace and then some a bracelet. I've got some earrings and stuff like that, some other place. You can order online later on. But so today you're going to accessorize yourself with trash. We turn trash to treasure, junk to jewel, waste to wealth, garbage into gold. We recycle, reuse, repurpose, restore, and we redeem. These are double-edged words to fight poverty and break the cycle of dependency. But this fish bracelet also tells the story how Jesus fed thousands of people with 2 fish. That's 1 fish, but when you lift it like that, it becomes 2. And 5 loaves of bread. Folded like this, it's shaped like 1 loaf of bread. Jesus said, I'll make you fishers of men. Wear the bracelet and go fish. What do you think? I call this the Sermon on the Arm. It's a conversation piece that can lead to the Prince of Peace. Dark means sin, red blood of Christ, white forgiveness, green growth, and yellow eternal life. I can see somebody nodding their head, starting to get it. The hardest part of sharing our faith is how do we get the conversation started? This bracelet is a bait, no pun intended. It's a hook. It's a lure. You can reel people in by just kind of, modeling it until they notice and they ask you what it is. If they don't, just slap them until they notice it. But when they ask you what it is, hook them. Fish, hook them. Not that kind of hook them, but this kind of hook them. Reel them in by telling them it's made out of paper. It's a non-threatening subject. People like recycling. It relates to people, especially the younger ones. Tell them it's made out of recycled paper. Airline magazine that's supposed to go to the dump, becomes an accessory. And then tell them it's made by single moms and widows to fight poverty and break the cycle of dependency. Again, that relates to people. It resonates to people because they like the idea of trade, not aid. They like the idea of helping people help themselves. And then finally, it gives you an opportunity to tell about the gospel story. How Jesus fed thousands of people with 2 fish and 1 loaf of bread. How dark means sin, red blood of Christ, white forgiveness, green growth, and yellow eternal life. Can you remember all of that? All right, I'm giving it to you, but there's a hook on it. I'm not going to ask you to pay, but the hook is you have to remember the story. 1 fish, 2 fish, and then 1 loaf of bread. You got it? Kids always get it real fast. Women get about half. Men, I have to give them the website. But seriously, 1 fish, 2 fish, and then 1 loaf of bread. If you're getting the 5 colors, dark means sin, red blood of Christ, white forgiveness, green growth, and yellow eternal life. All right? The second hook is, there's 4 hooks. Remember the story, tell the story. Remember the story, and then the second hook is tell the story. So I tell you the story, you tell the story to someone. It's a story that keeps on spreading. And they'll tell the story to others who will tell the story to others. Again, the hard part of sharing the gospel is how do you get the conversation started? How do you get the foot in the door? And how do you get them to respond? These are simple, easy way to do that. It's not non-threatening, it's not condemning, it's not judging. But rather, it's a fun activity, especially for the younger ones. The third hook is, remember the story, tell the story, and then give it away. Don't give it to each other. Let this fish swim across the street. Let this fish swim from hand to hand, from heart to heart, from mouth to mouth. Huh? Isn't it great? It's a gift that keeps on giving. The fourth hook is, remember the story, tell the story, give it away in 3 days or the fish will stink in your arm. Like visitors after 3 days. Mother-in-law, you'll figure that out later on. But no, just joking. Remember the story, tell the story, give it away in 3 days. That gives you a sense of urgency. And that's the issue about Christianity, is when there's a lack of sense of urgency, we're going to just, get too relaxed. And then we forget about it. So, remember the story, tell the story, give it. Hardly any day passes by when nobody asks me what these are. Especially when I start wearing earrings, but that's beside the point. This is a necklace. Again, people ask me what it is. And then when they do, I say, funny you ask. And I ask them what they see. And some people will say it's a bug, jumping jack, flying trapeze, spider, anything but voodoo doll. Put the feet together, what does it look like to you? Looks more like a man, or a cross, or a man hanging on a cross. So here's an evangelistic tool that I can share with you this morning. It's a teaching tool. Use this purposefully. Have an intention. And you can't give it to 100 people because you only have 2. So think about someone that you want to share your faith with. Again, not to each other. Well, you do, but not this one. And someone that you can perhaps lead to the Lord. So prayerfully, thoughtfully, think of somebody special that you would like to model this to. It may take several passes and things like that for that interest to peak. But then when you do that, share with that person and see how that person reacts. It may not be the first person, it may not be the second person. It may be the 100th person within 3 days. Then you give it to them with the understanding that they also give it to someone else. It's a gift that keeps on giving. It's a story that keeps on spreading. Remember the story, tell the story, give it away in 3 days. Any question regarding that? I know there's going to be question and answer later on, but anyone would like to ask that? Now, those of you who are in the know, this is just the beginning. This is just the first step. It's not the end. But again, the hardest part sometimes in sharing our faith, in touching people's lives, is the beginning. In my case, my beginning in this particular story is helping the homeless. I've given homeless people fish bracelets to the point that some of them chase me not for the water and the bread. They can get that anywhere. I'm the only one making this in the world. This is my design. Well, I stole this story from the Bible, but encourage you to do the same. James. His name is James. He's the first guy I met at the homeless camp 4 years ago. One Sunday morning, I didn't preach like I do now and didn't feel like going to church like some preachers do sometimes. Fortunately, I'm a missionary, so I can go anywhere I want to go. That particular Sunday, I was dressed like this, ended up in Lancaster Avenue at Unity Park. I met James. And I needed a conversation piece that can lead to the Prince of Peace, so I started giving bracelets like this. And this particular picture didn't show up here, but he's holding a bowl full of fish bracelet. He was, at that time, my best distributor of fish bracelets. Fast forward 4 years later, this is how James looked like today. And he's no longer homeless. If you apply for housing, especially today, you can get it probably in a month or 2 months the latest. Just, go through that process. There's a system in which people are being encouraged to get off of the streets. Not only are they eyesore, but it's dangerous out there. There's too much drama. It's not good for mental health. It's, the state, the government, caseworkers, volunteers have figured out that the best way we can address homelessness is to get them out of the street. And then from there, then you can work on their mental illness, then you can work with their drug problems, then you can work with jobs, then you can work with relationships. As long as people are homeless in the streets, it's pretty much a dead-end situation for them. And so budgets are being used by state, by the city, by the county, by the churches, by individuals. Just get these people off of the streets. So James today now works as a volunteer at John Peter Smith. hospital. He's been on TV several times because his life has taken such dramatic change. And so, in working with the homeless, lives are changed. And to this day, he still, distributes bracelets for me. And he volunteers as one of our facilitators in our Bible studies and group classes. We've been on TV. We've been on newspapers. Again, you see the fish bracelet in there. We use the fish bracelet as an opportunity to connect with people. Next, this was one, we're also in several magazines, and now these are online. I work with an organization called Love Acts. I'm not paid by Love Acts. I'm not a staff, but I helped start this organization. I recruited the founder of it and trained him, and now he's training other people. So my objective is to recruit people who will recruit other people, to teach people who will teach other people, who help people who help others. Didn't Jesus Christ did that? He discipled apostles who discipled other disciples who discipled. And this was done before internet, radio, television. And yet the Word of God spread throughout the world in their lifetime. We put too many emphasis on technology, but what really matters is the one-on-one relationship, the heart-to-heart relationship. What really matters is connection. And connection happens with interaction. And interaction happens with relation. I'm winding down my work here with the homeless because, I want to go back home. I'm just here temporarily. It's been a blessing. It's been a good run for 4 years. But in the Philippines, here I'm homeless. I've lived in a van for over 2 years. And I found the cheapest way to live in this country without electric bill, without utility bills, without rental bills, without taxes, without anything. And still be of help 24/7. And be of service and do great things. I'm still in touch with the Philippines, running the largest ministry of our fellowship, not only in the Philippines, but throughout Southeast Asia. Online, amazing things can be done. But even though, and when I'm in the Philippines, I can continue to recruit for the homeless here. I can continue to train. Last week I was doing webinar for a group of people in the Philippines. I can do webinar in the Philippines, in my island, under a coconut tree, without electricity, running water, but I have Wi-Fi. And still connect with you guys here. One of the things that I did about 15 years ago, and I've been doing a lot of stuff for 100 years now, is give goats to poor families. Yeah, I'm 100 years old. I give goats to families because goats give manure. Manure becomes fertilizer for the gardens. Goat give milk. Milk is rich in calcium and protein. If you don't believe I'm 100 years old. And these two things can wipe out hunger and malnutrition. It's the goat milk. And the goats can transform villages and people's lives. Trust me, I've done this. I've taken the driest surface of the entire Philippines. And Philippines is just like Vietnam. It rains a lot. Not this place. It's rocky, it's hilly, hardly any rain, hardly any soil. People are dirt poor. None of the kids ever graduated college. Many kids are malnourished. I mean, it's just the pits. And when I started farming there, I go, I couldn't get a harvest in my first year. Nothing grew in that place except grass. So, grass, goats, finally it dwelled in me, let's raise goats. Goats give manure, goats eat grass. It's a win-win situation. And by the grace of God, Rocky Hilly were nourished by goat manure. And pretty soon, we were having bumper crops. I mean bumper crops. One thing I learned is that some of those rocks have nutrients in them that certain plants really like to suck. their nutrients. One of them is dragon fruit, pitaya. Pitaya sucks the nutrients of rocks, and we are now becoming the dragon fruit capital of the Philippines. Because dragon fruit is cactus, our place is a desert where it hardly rains, and cactus are low maintenance. You don't need very much water. You don't need very much soil. And using what we've learned, we are now growing sweet, vibrant, colorful, rich, huge dragon fruit, as much as a kilo. We have the sweetest dragon fruit in the entire country. With goat's milk, we make soap. Cleopatra is known to have taken bath in goat's milk soap. It's an expensive hobby there. But I have goat's milk. I've been doing goat's milk for about 15 years now. We're also producing goat milk-based drinks. Last week, we topped our production at 8,000 bottles. 8,000 bottles a day of goat milk. Now, this is a place where hardly any goats before. Today, it is the center of goat raising in the Philippines. In 15 years, it is by far the largest, most diverse, most holistic, organic farming community in the Philippines. Before, the talent leave. They go to the cities to look for jobs, to look for opportunities, to get money. Now, people are moving to this village. You know what the problem of poor countries are and what the solution is? The problem is migration. The problem is migration. Because where there's poverty, the best and the brightest leave, the most able, the most strongest, those who have the leadership and wherewithals, they leave. And that village will remain poor as long as that migration takes place. You want to solve problems in poor countries and poor communities? You encourage the young to bloom where they're born, to grow where they're planted. They're the ones who will solve political problems, economic problems, spiritual problems. You heard about churches in Africa baptizing 100 a month or 100 a year? And then you visit that place and there's only a dozen women, mostly. You know why? Because of migration. In the last 10 years, we baptized in our village 1,500 people. Had we not addressed poverty, most of those people would have been gone, or most of that church would have been below 100. Because when your leaders leave, your preachers leave, your Sunday school preachers leave, you start all over again. And so to address that problem, George Bush one time said, "It's the economy, stupid. Address the economy, and then you address the problems." Because of what we did, the government built us a new road right through our campus. Concrete road right through our campus. And now it's the government looking at us. We have better model farms than the government. And so we're now being used by the government as a model community. They bring their government officials, they bring community leaders to our farm to learn about organic farming. Because we can do a better job, we can do it with more passion, we can do it with sincerity, and we can address the real issues. And that place where there was not a single bathroom in that village when I went there. Now we built our own water tank. We have our own farm resort. We have become a tourist destination. You want to go there as a church group, you can stay in our dorm. Or you want to bring your kids, we have Princess Hut for mom and dad. And if you want to teach your children about values, I'll put them in a hut up the hill without electricity, without running water, just them, God, and the goats. I'll feed them fish and rice, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. When they come home, they'll never complain about your cooking again. But seriously, we're a school without walls, classroom without ceilings. Sky is the limit. With God, nothing is impossible. We already have a vocational school building. When I go there, I'll be starting and launching an agricultural school, college. Eventually, hopefully we will have a university. We already have land. We have acres, over 100 acres of land. We have the facilities, we have the building, we have the leadership. We have a new generation who will continue to work. I've been here 2 years, never gone home. The work there has continued and became bigger and stronger than when I left. We have our own restaurant. We have our own tourist traps. When you go there, you'll never... So encouraging people to come and visit us in Arapal. This is our big hut. We promote trade, not aid. We teach people self-sustainability. We produce all kinds of products now. We have over 100 products that we're producing in this village. And by the grace of God, this was all accomplished in 15 years. So when I go back to the Philippines, I'll start a whole new work. I have a TV program waiting for me there. And it's being shown in a TV station. We'll continue to teach self-sustainability, goat raising. So when I go back, let me fast forward here. These are goat milk product. Well, let me just end in this part. So when I go back, I'll start another village and start another mission work in an island that has no electricity, no running water, no indoor plumbing. And hopefully, before I die, be able to turn this island into a self-sustaining. But also when I go back, I'm planning to run for Congress in the Philippines and offer my brand of fighting poverty without corruption. And if that goes well, I'll run for president. I'd like to ask you to vote for me, but you can't. My theme is going to be no goats, no glory. I'm going to milk that goat for all it's worth. But I promise you, I will not be a bad politician. I hope to offer a solution to our political problems there. And I'm not going to win, but by running for office, it'll give me a platform to be able to share my thoughts, my views. My only problem is if I will win, we got a big problem. Because you won't see me again, I won't be back here again. But anyway, by the grace of God, we're able to build a farm. The governor has been to my farm last month, and in her visit, she tried our goat milk, tried our goat products. We have received multiple awards from the government and the communities. And I'm sharing this because mission work has not been done this way before. Missionaries and preachers focus on sometimes offering. And they have become predators instead of preachers. Mercenaries instead of missionaries. When Jesus Christ came, He did not pass the collection plate. There's a use for that. We have bills to pay. We have, salaries to make. But when that becomes our focus, we lose the very purpose of our existence as a religious community. Jesus Christ gave up luxuries. He could have arrived here with 10,000 angels in a white white horse. But Jesus Christ arrived in a donkey, not taking seriously for His economic situation, but that He was able to exude beyond the earthly riches that people look for. And if we want to have a life of relevance individually and collectively, we have to be like Jesus, not only in our outward appearance and not only in our demeanor, but in our walk and in our service. I know not many people can do what I do. It's tough out there. Last night, it was hot in the van. I had to turn on my air conditioner. But Harry didn't have an air conditioner to turn on. And thousands of people out in the streets didn't have it. So let's pray for those less fortunate. And let's go beyond praying. Let's do something. The work that I've been blessed with, these kids, 15 years ago, this is how they look like. By the grace of God, many of them have finished college. Some of them have 2 college degrees, where none ever finished before. And some of them have master's degrees and are working on their doctorate degrees. This place before that had no hope whatsoever will soon be hosting a university, maybe after my lifetime. These 2 girls are now college degrees. The older one has a master's degree in counseling. Lives can change. And we don't have to go halfway around the world. We don't even have to go across the state. We can change people's lives across the street. Last and final slide shows, typhoon hit my village, destroyed everything I did. Buildings, huts, goat houses. We had to start all over again with a tarp over our head. But the typhoon did not just open doors literally. It also opened hearts. People have become more spiritual. And usually that's what happens with calamities. Calamities can turn into opportunities. Tragedies can turn into victories. And so when we see people who are hungry and thirsty, or when we see ourselves suffering, whether that's relationship, whether that's financial, whether that's physical, we must turn these as awakening periods in our lives to draw us closer to God, to help us become more like Him and encourage others to be the same. Look at these final slides, how our village has been transformed. Today, we have a congregation. We baptized 1,500 people in the last 8 years. We built bigger, better, stronger. We have leadership that are homegrown. I sent all these leaders to school. 100 years. That's why I lived 100 years. I don't know why he got in my picture, but he was wearing my bracelets and carrying a goat. That's not bad. Actually, it's bad because that's not the real George Bush. He's a friend of mine who impersonates him. But seriously, I want to end my my time, and I've gone over time. That's what happens when you invite missionaries. We don't go by hour, we go by calendar. But thank you for this opportunity. It's good to see you. And if any of you have been touched in some way, this is an opportunity to extend the invitation. If you need prayers, you need encouragement, if you need to rededicate your life, not just spiritually, but also in terms of engagement and involvement in the lives of people around you, in the lives of your community. It's not a social gospel. Jesus Christ fed the hungry. He healed the sick. You can't find a better example than that. And you don't have to be full-time. Jesus was a carpenter. Paul was a tent maker. They used their profession to fuel their passion. Wherever you are in your life, as a student, as a youth, as a single, as an adult, as a married, as a mother, as a father, we extend the invitation. May God bless you. Thank you very much.
We're going to take a 10 minutes break.